Hey everyone, it's John Heath here again for MiltonRose Learning with another Let's Learn video on the romantic poem England in 1819 by Percy Shelley. Okay, so this is a pretty grim one, to be fair. So we're going to start with some of the key historical context, because this was a very tumultuous kind of time. Then we will have a poetry reading. Okay, it's only a sonnet, so 14 lines, so that should be quite quick. And then we will whiz through some of the best annotations ready to go straight into your anthologies. Okay, so yeah, come on then people, let's dive in. So we've got the key context there. You can see Shelley looking very pensive and in romantic mode. And then we have an image there of the Peterloo Massacre, which we're going to look at first. Okay, so yeah, let's dive in. So first off then, we have the Peterloo Massacre, which you need to know about, which was 1819. So this poem is written directly in response to an event which you can Google, the Peterloo Massacre. So it's written. There was basically a cavalry charge by British troops, charging a peaceful working class protest in Manchester. Okay, so they're protesting for better rights, basically. And it ended up killing 18 and injuring many hundreds of people, and it kind of led to demands of parliamentary reform. Okay, look, basically the government had to reform. So it showed tyranny, and it showed that the government didn't care about the common person in England, and it showed a real kind of nasty side to the government, and then there was a clear need for governmental reform. Shelley was incensed by this because romantic poets were actually they were very into nature, as we know, but they were also extremely political, and some were almost revolutionary in terms of their politics, like Shelley. So he really wants to change England here in relation to that massacre. The second piece of context you need to worry about is corrupt monarchy and government. So this was a time where we tend to take democracy for granted these days, but it wasn't always like that. So in England, there was a corrupt monarchy and a bit of a corrupt government. So Shelley is attacking the deteriorating rule of the mad King George III. He was a very interesting historical figure and kind of lost his marbles. The selfish Prince Regent, who was kind of ruling on George's behalf, and an unelected parliament, so they hadn't been elected like in general elections, that oppressed starving citizens through laws like the Corn Laws, which were very punitive kind of laws in this period. You can obviously Google them, but it was basically taking food out of the mouths of the common man. In England. So Shelley's attacking it and basically saying the government aren't looking after us, and they're very corrupt, and we've got this mad King George III at the top of the country, and this country's sliding down badly, and we've got to try and change it. So it's very important to understand the corruption here that he's railing against. And then the last one is what we call romantic rebellion and revolution. Now, Shelley comes from that artistic movement of romanticism, so you want to kind of research that in more detail. But the romantics there's two real strands to their thinking. They were very pro-nature. They loved nature and saw it as kind of almost sign of God's existence in some ways. But also they were very political as well, and they wanted to make a better world, and they did not like the people being oppressed. So as a radical romantic poet, Shelley used his work to challenge the state and church tyranny, because he saw the church as part of the problem as well, ending the sonnet with hope that violent oppression would spark total political rebirth, maybe in terms of the French Revolution, which had happened a few years before, and he might be arguing there for a revolution in the UK, which was very, very powerful stuff in this period and very dangerous to say. So the guy is on one. He's very quite feisty, and it kind of shows. Now we have a lovely kind of an avatar, I suppose, there of King George III, looking very regal in his full pomp and ceremony, but he doesn't look very approachable, does he? Let's put it that way. And in the poem, Shelley kind of attacks him. So we've got a sonnet here. England in 1819. Should we have a little poetry reading? I think we can read it all in one go. Let's do it together then. An old, mad, blind, despised, and dying king. How many adjectives do you want to stick in at the start? This guy is really powerfully against the king. Princes, the dregs of their dull race, who flow through public scorn, mud from a muddy spring. Rulers who neither see nor feel nor know. So the rulers don't care about the common man, they're blind to their suffering. But leechlike to their fainting country cling till they drop, blind in blood, without a blow. So the rulers of this country are like leeches just sucking the blood out of the people. It's a very powerful kind of metaphor. A people starved and stabbed in the untilled field, an army whom liberticide and prey makes as a two-edged sword to all who wield golden and sanguine laws which tempt and slay. So the people are starved and stabbed. They're being obviously that's an allusion to the Peterloo Massacre, isn't it? Religion Christless, godless, a book sealed. So not even the church is helping. A senate, time's worst statute, unrepealed. Our graves. And then he ends on a revolutionary note. This may change. From which a glorious phantom may burst to illuminate our tempestuous day. So it ends with a very powerful call to potential revolution. He's kind of saying, this may change if we can overthrow all of these kind of horrible rulers, a bit like the French Revolution. I don't know if he's referring to that directly, but I definitely think it's an allusion to the revolutionary ideals which had happened in France about 20 to 30 years before. Okay, so this guy is, he's not happy at all. So we can see London there. Look, it's this is through Shelley's eyes. It's just mob rule, and it's people getting very, very kind of intensely against the kind of rule of King George III. So let's have a look then, and you can get these annotations into your anthology. I think this will really help you. So, an old, mad, blind, despised and dying king, princes the dregs of their dull race. Now, let's think about this. Cumulative listing at the start. Very, very harsh adjectives there with negative connotations. It ruthlessly strips King George III of his royal dignity, depicts the monarchy as decaying and physically incompetent. Look at those adjectives. You wouldn't want any of those used against yourself, would you? And he uses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 adjectives. He's listing off King George's incompetencies there. He uses a degrading metaphor as well, the dregs. Now, the dregs are you can interpret it either way, but a good way of understanding it, the dregs are at the bottom of a drink, like the last little bits that you don't really want to drink. So it frames the royal heirs as worthless sediment, attacking the concept of hereditary rule. He's saying, why are the princes taking over just because they were born from the king? The king's a fool, and the princes are probably going to be fools, so why are we just passing power on to them? He's arguing effectively for democracy, isn't he, instead of hereditary rule. Aggressive, urgent rhythm as well. When you read the lines, it immediately establishes a scathing, radical and defiant political tone. This guy is angry, and it shows throughout the lines of the poem. Then we have parasitic rulers and violence. So rulers who neither see nor feel nor know, but leech-like to their fainting country cling. So they're like parasites, the rulers. They're like leeches. The ruling elite are bloodsuckers, draining the life and the wealth of the suffering nation. And that's because in this period you had the aristocrats who were the top landowners and rulers in this country, but they didn't work. The peasants in the fields would do all the work, and then the aristocrats just take some of their labour. They tax them, take some of the food, and away you go. But they don't provide any labour, so they're like parasites. The tricolon of negation, neither see nor feel nor know, that highlights the total moral blindness of the rulers and their apathy. They just don't care. They're like, well, I'm sitting in my palace, eating venison or something, very nice like that. And you're in the fields like killing yourself, and if you get out of line, I'll just send the cavalry in like the Peterloo Massacre. So they don't care, and that tricolon there, or the rule of 3, kind of shows that. The personification of England as well, fainting country, because the country can't faint, obviously, portrays the public as exhausted. They're the vulnerable victims of state neglect. They're absolutely on their kind of last breath almost, and the country's very close to death. State injustice then, and the Peterloo Massacre. So a people starved and stabbed in the untilled field, an army whom liberticide and prey makes as a two-edged sword. So let's unpick that for you. So there's alliteration and violent verbs, starved and stabbed, with the sibilants, the S sound being repeated, directly evokes the bloody brutality of the Peterloo Massacre against starving citizens. Some of these people were starving and they just wanted food, and then the cavalry just rode in and rode them down. I mean, can you imagine that happening today? You probably would have a revolution. It would be that kind of incensing. Symbolism as well, untilled field, that emphasises how societal neglect and oppression have destroyed national productivity and agriculture. The fields haven't been tilled, they haven't been, kind of prepared to put the seeds in to grow the food. That the country's falling apart, basically. It can barely feed itself. And he creates a neologism, which is a kind of new word at the time for what's happening here, liberticide. Side is the morpheme that means to kill, like suicide means to kill yourself, for instance. Regicide means to kill a king or a reigning monarch. Liberticide, liberty is freedom, so it means the killing of freedom. Okay, very interesting kind of new word there. And it accuses the military of murdering liberty and warning that state violence ultimately destroys the oppressors too. And I think by having to create that neologism, he's almost saying the situation in England is so bad, I'm having to create new words to capture its horror. Okay, I think that's a very important point for you to kind of remember. And then the closing lines, as it moves towards its very dramatic denouement, are graves from which a glorious phantom may burst to illumine our tempestuous day. It actually ends on quite an optimistic note. So the extended metaphor of graves, so that's the graves of everything, the graves of people who had died, but also the graves of corrupt institutions like the monarchy and the church and parliament. As dead relics, they're just awaiting their burial now. But the dynamic verb and imagery burst, to illumine, to illuminate, to light up, suggests a violent explosive dawn of probable revolution that will bring light and clarity to these dark times, i.e. the French Revolution might break out in England. We might have an English Revolution. But it's an ambiguous symbol because he says glorious phantom. A phantom's like a ghost. So I think that is a metaphor for, or a symbol for, the revolutionary spirit of freedom and democratic rebirth rising from the ashes of tyranny. Okay, I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think it's a bit ambiguous. He leaves it kind of vague, I think. But the guy wants a revolution, let's put it that way, to kind of overthrow the corrupt British rule. Okay. Right then, bit of a breathless one there, England in 1819, but hopefully you've really enjoyed it. Obviously, as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a Let's Learn video again. That should really start you off and give you a real good primer now for England in 1819. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I know we have, and yeah, it all just remains to say really that. Obviously dive into the poem now and get your notes kind of really in order. It's been an absolute pleasure. So take care and we'll see you soon.